My name is Grace Carrier, and I work for the Brooklyn Climate Response Committee, who's putting on this event. And we are, a committee of the town of Brooklyn, and we do a few different programs. One of them is this monthly presentations. And if you want to find out more about our presentations, you can sign up to our newsletter. You can just write your name on that sheet over there, and we'll add you to it. Or just keep your eye out for posters. We also do a home visit program, which is about energy coaching, talking through ways to make your home more energy efficient. So if you're interested in that, you can also sign up on that sheet over there, or you can come talk to me afterwards, or we don't have posters for that. So, and tonight our event is about composting and climate change. And we have two speakers. So we have Mark King, who is the Organics Management Specialist for the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. And it's specifically their Materials Management Division. And he's going to share a presentation with us. And then we have Kate Tompkins, who's the founder of Chickadee Compost, which is a local composting organization. And that's been up running since 2022. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, give or take. So yeah, it should be a great, combination of, both local and statewide initiatives. And yeah, we'll have time for a Q&A afterwards.
Like him?
No.
You could just want to add that Mark is also known as the compost guru for the state of Maine.
Oh, really?
So
I didn't know that.
Is
if
he
anyone has questions
making a
about
presentation?
composting, okay.
Showing it right now.
Oh, good. So I didn't need to do that.
So you guys ready for me to start?
Yes.
All right, sweet. So thanks again for the invitation. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. The legislative session has definitely got me on my toes. But I want to take you sort of through a program that we give across the state to talk a little bit more about how collecting food in the first place and composting can help not just improve your soil and your environment, help with climate, but also give some resiliency to your community. So going forward, let's see here. This is a standard that we've used for many, many years, that we believe that each citizen in Maine wastes about 150 to 200 pounds of food scraps per year. We recently had a food loss and waste generation study, and the numbers are really eerily similar. So that's still the standard that I use. For every citizen in Maine, we waste approximately 200 pounds of food a year. And so with food scraps making up 25 to 44% of our waste stream, roughly in Maine about 28%, that's a lot of weight that we can pull out and put towards higher and better uses, such as helping to feed the food insecure and animals across the community. So as far as looking at the whole thing, the first thing that I don't do is I don't say food waste, because food waste means it's already garbage. Wasted food is a better answer because a lot of the food that is wasted still has edibility or higher and better uses besides going straight to landfill. So the new way to look at it is wasted food. And it wastes the whole system. It wastes all of the efforts that went into producing it in the first place. The fertilizer, pesticides, labor, energy, all the things that happen to and the packaging and all the things that happen to make it available for market. So when we waste it, all that effort is thrown away as well. And it's something that we definitely want to get people more alert on. This is something we developed in 2016. We didn't necessarily like the EPA's standard, so we created our own food hierarchy. And starting from the top to the bottom, the reduce unwanted food is the most best thing that you can do. Next, if you can't not produce food that's going to be wasted, you can actually try and get it to people to eat. If you have a buffet going and at 1:30 it ends and there's still plenty of food, there's nothing wrong with keeping that warm and taking it to a homeless shelter to give people a later lunch. There's just things that we should be doing that we're not. So we're trying to help develop that. When you can't feed people, feeding animals, and as it goes down the chain, composting and digestion are on the same level because we believe they both have value. So we would like to see either one. And then when that doesn't happen, then we're looking at waste to energy and then ultimately disposal, which is the least desirable. These are the two kind of options that are out there right now for food scraps in Maine. You can either collect them and compost at home, collect them and compost at a facility farther away from home, or collect them and send them to the anaerobic digester. Or as I said, if you can catch it before it becomes wasted, you can actually get it to people to feed hungry individuals or to feed animals. So there's all kinds of options out there, and we're just trying to figure out the best one for a community. I find that when stuff goes to digestion, it's a great thing for the Stony Vale Farm in Exeter, but nothing ever comes back from that. All that material goes through their system. It produces electricity, it produces the biogas that they're now piping off to be sold, and the solids produce bedding for their cows, and the liquid digestate goes into the fertilizer for the farm, but it's a closed loop system. So nothing comes out of it. And I want to see communities that generate food scraps keep them in the same zip code and generate compost that they can use to make their soils healthy. And I believe there's a little bit of each. There's many tools in the toolbox, and the digester has its place, as does local composting. So that's kind of how we look at it, multiple tools in the toolbox. Composting is basically a biological process that takes raw organic materials and through microbial activity transforms them into a very stable, albeit recalcitrant product that breaks down slowly over time, but improves the organic matter and the vitality of the soil it's put into, which is a really good thing. Some of the benefits of community composting is low cost, low tech. It can be done small, large scale, reduces the volume and weight of trash. So some communities actually pre-compost and then send it off anyways to trash, but that's not really a very preferred way to go. It keeps organics local in the same zip code, which is super important. 40% of the initial volume is lost because it's mostly water weight. And when compost works appropriately, it gives off water vapor and carbon dioxide, which helps to break down the material by roughly 40%. The reduction in odor and leachate potential is obvious because it ties up the nutrients and ties up the liquid. And you get a stable, odorless, marketable soil additive that just improves the soil, which is a good thing. But as far as the climate change, there's a bunch of bonuses. The very first thing is that it reduces greenhouse gas emission. When material rots, it produces methane, which is 25 times more potent than the carbon dioxide that pumps out of an active compost pile. So that's a really huge savings right there. It enhances soil life because it provides functioning microorganisms into the soil, but it doesn't necessarily bring a new organism into the soil. It brings organisms that get the other ones in the soil fired up and they fight them off, and it makes the soil naturally stronger. So I'm not adding a fresh, whole new ecosystem. I'm challenging the existing one and giving them an opportunity to step up to the plate and save their soil. So that's the benefit there. I was a paramedic for 27 years, and I say that compost defibrillates our soil back to life. Same idea. Promotes carbon sequestration. That's super important because the soil then can absorb more carbon. And that's a really good thing because we want to conserve as much carbon as we can. It supports sustainable agriculture because it replaces having to do commercial fertilizers, which are costly and bad for the environment. So it makes it stronger. And then the biggest thing is it builds your community resilience. It lets you adapt to all the different climate changes. For example, when there's a drought, if you use compost in your garden, it holds on to water and keeps your garden more thriving and more vital than the next person that isn't using compost. So all really good things for the climate. Some of the common systems, I'm a big fan of the lobster trap bin for schools and homes for backyard composting. Each of these bins is 12 feet long by 4 feet high, and it holds approximately a cubic yard, which is what you need to maintain heat through the winter. I've done some research and published it, and 1 cubic yard is the minimum amount that'll work. Here's some kids having a good time, so it's great for morale. And sometimes I get challenged by people that believe my trap system is a little ugly, so they want to do something more expensive. And this does fine. The only Benefit is that each time you flip it, it gets a mix, but the cost versus the bin is astronomical. You're going from a $57 unit to a $400 or $500 unit. So, but people sometimes want aesthetic over effective, and that's fine. I've learned to live with that. The Maryland bin system is a little bigger version of the one I just showed you. And the idea is each one is 10 by 10 by 10, and that allows you to use a tractor to do a larger volume. And this is an example of one we did in Bedford. Each one of the bays is 10 by 10 by 10, and there were three of them. We'd lay down horse manure, and in this case, we were doing marine mammal parts, add the marine mammals, and then I had plenty of graduate students that did all the grunt work for us, which was awesome. And then add fresh husk manure, and we'd flip it every 2 weeks. And at the end of the sixth week, it would go into curing and became awesome compost. So just another thing. A lot of communities in Maine have leaf and yard piles. We have an exemption in our rules that allows you to take up to 5 cubic yards per month to put into the pile if you want to try it for composting. And that's a great way to sort of step into it without getting too crazy and see if it's going to be a program that works for you and your community. This is just a cool slide. If you start on the right, you see a big pile of fluffy leaves. As you start moving to the left, you notice it gets smaller and a little darker. And that's several years of succession at the Yarmouth transfer station. And that just shows you as it gets darker, we call that gaining humus. And what it means is all the nutrients are being tied up into complex compounds, which when they're put in the soil, they don't give everything away. The microbes have to work on them just the same as if we went to the bank and stuck our ATM card in the machine and got out a couple $100. We don't take our whole fortune, we just take it a little bit at a time. And that's how these soils work. Turned windrow is a little more aggressive. Compost is formed into long, narrow piles and turned either by a tractor or by a turning machine. Kate's going to talk a little bit about that, so I won't dwell upon it. This is a school system that was doing a really great job. I think they have since stopped, partly because they had a change in the guard of people. But on the top left is husk manure. On the top right is their garden that they feed the compost to. On the bottom is the compost when it goes into curing, and on the right is the finished material. And basically what they do is they collect their food scraps from the cafeteria, bring it out, add it to the compost pile, work the compost, and then in the spring when they plant again, they put the compost into the soil and then they start to grow their crops. And it's just a really nice system. This is the finished compost, and those are the three principals. David Pope, the teacher, the gentleman is the groundskeeper. I never caught his name, and Mark Fisher is the principal. And it works extremely well. This is a farm in Sydney, Maine that actually does composting using a windrow turner. And all it is like an ice auger upside down, and it kind of churns and flips the material and forms this beautiful pile behind it. So really just getting kind of into how you get started. First thing you can do is you can go to our website, and I created these documents a couple of years ago anyways, and they're free. They're PDFs. You can either look on our website, or if you want to send me an email, I'll be glad to send you a copy. And it just gets you started. The one on the left is for communities, bigger, and the one on the right is for school systems to get them going. And that's the first step. And then you want to figure out what you have. If you're going to do a building or a school or a whole community, you need to figure out what you have for material, how much food you're going to generate, and then we try to figure out how much carbon you need to balance that out. It's just a really nice kind of way to go. And this is the residuals characterization study. You do it in the kitchen, you do it in the prep area, and you do it in the service area, and then eventually you do it in the actual dumpster if you want to see what's being wasted. The stuff that's collected, anything that was once alive is capable. We're very leery of paper and any sort of compostable items because A, they have PFAS in them, and B, they do not compost unless they're in a super big commercial system that is managed daily. I just don't. I've done paper I've made go away, napkins I've made go away, but plastic cups and forks and knives and things like that, they don't go away. It's all greenwashing. It just does not work. So if it was once alive, definitely it's capable. But if it's been processed, potentially have some PFAS in it, not good. So once again, here's the pre-consumer material. That's really awesome stuff. I'd like to see that go to people if it's real fresh, or to animals before we even think about it getting into composting, because that's all stuff that animals can really benefit from, or people, depending upon the age. This stuff, not really good for people. Some hog farmers will take it, but after that, it's really just not edible. When you do this kind of process and you start collecting food, you got to work with your staff. And you don't just tell them once, you tell them multiple times. And when they screw up, you
This
don't get
is the
mad.
climate committee.
You just redistribute. So it's a really good thing. So I'm a big
Guys
favor
are
of,
really good.
is somebody talking?
Yes, they're gone.
Okay. Okay. So you start with a pilot, and what a pilot is in the military, they say slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And the idea is that you start small, you make small mistakes, and you keep working. So what a pilot does is it allows you to collect a little bit of food, play with it. Kate will talk to you about her containers and everything, so I'm not going to get really deep into this, but plenty of education. You see the lower right, there's the Portland composting. Lots of education, give people an opportunity to do the right thing and keep dwelling on it. Then what you want to do is you want to gather information, launch a survey, find out who's interested so you know what the scale is going to look like, so that that way you can start really figuring things out. Then you step up and launch it, and give a deadline. We're going to collect food for a month, we're going to compost it, and then you're going to see the results, and we'll decide if we want to keep going. Just a really great way to do it. And then the thing to remember is we think success is a straight line, but success involves lots and lots of patience and lots of activities. So it really may be a whole bunch of gyrations before you get to something running smooth and steady. But just persevere and it'll be fine. And then you figure out, are you going to compost on site? Are you going to compost off site with Kate or other things like that? Or is Exeter Agri-Energy AgriCycle going to come in and say, we'll take everything and, bring it up to our digester? I will tell you that with both Kate's option and Exeter, there's a little bit of expense. The difference is that with Kate's option, you're using a business that's located on your island, on the peninsula. So you're keeping stuff close to home and you're keeping those nutrients available. So something to think about. Either way works. I can't be a fan of everybody, so I just try to help. But get the people involved because their success is your success. And then we have basically a good example. It's called Garbage to Garden. I kind of wanted you to see this because they started out with a small business collecting from curbside. They still do it. They also do some commercial. And they have these kiosks, and it's so cute because you come and you drop your food in these containers, and there's plenty of education. So if you drop a diaper in here, you're a really bad person because been given every opportunity to be a good person and do the right thing. So I love that about their program. General facility, I mean, you look at the footprint, a 30 by 40-foot area. And if you do it at your transfer station, it has to have an operations manual change and it has to be within the solid waste boundary. If you do it anywhere else, all you have to do is send to the department for a registration form and you register where you're going to put it. And then they ask you questions about it. And once it's registered, there's no fee. And it just gives us a place to look if there's a complaint. Uh, Locally, what do you need to do? Well, the first thing is you need a good site. It has to have deep, well-drained soils, a durable work surface, and good stormwater control. That's all stuff that we can help you with. The site has to be set up to make sense. It has to run like a clock. So if you look at this one, a truck comes in, drops off the load in the receiving area. If there's any garbage, it goes into the waste bypass area. Then the amendment is mixed with it in the mixing area, and then you compost on the pad, and then finally you have the curing area. And the way this works is that after your truck empties out, if you have a spray wash station, say it's got a lot of putrescibility stuff in it, you spray it clean, then you can put fresh compost in it so the backhaul pays money as well. So it's a great way to save on the climate, on the footprint, the carbon footprint, and also it's a good chance to bring your compost to somewhere to be used. Uh, and then only process what you can manage because people work on tip fees. The more money you get, the more you want more money. But if you get too much material that you can't process it, then you got a big pile and it becomes a big mess, and you got birds and rats and odors. And so never bite more than you can chew. This is a great site. I actually went to school here in the 80s, and I helped them get started. I actually wrote their application and someone else did the permit. And it's just a great operation. Food is collected from the Farmington cafeteria, and then it's taken to the site, the compost site, for delivery. It's dumped into the skid steer. You see the kids eat pretty well at UMF. And then it's brought down to what I call the wind loaf. It's a ginormous pile of horse manure. We dent it, dump the food, and then compost it. It's a really beautiful thing, and it works really well. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about our waste diversion grant program. Kate has gotten quite a couple grants out of us. Basically, and I'm actually issuing another one this next week, I believe, and then another one in the fall. The grant can go as high as $50,000, and it can be as low as $347, depending on what you need to get. And we require a 25% match. And we're looking for people that have not ever gotten one before or are in an underserved area uh, and are doing cool things. And I'm trying to reach out to pantries and food co-ops and things like that, because one of the things I think is really important is keeping food fresh. So buying freezers and buying refrigerators are definitely things we would consider under this grant process. It's a really good thing. And then as far as this is kind of my closing slide, in order to divert food scraps from disposal, you want to encourage gleaning and share tables as much as you can in schools. Gleaning is when basically they're done harvesting and a group of people go in and collect all that's left over that's not going to go to market. And backyard composting, whenever I do any community composting, I always strongly promote backyard as well, because I think there's a combination of both. There are the people that want to compost at home, the people that want to compost at the transfer station or wherever, and then the people that want to compost at home in the spring and summer. But in the winter, they don't want to dig a path out to their pile, so they want to go to the transfer station. So we have room for everybody. If you want to do food scraps, definitely hold and you want to collect around town, have a kiosk with lots of education. I can definitely help with that. If you want to know more about the program as far as the registration process, is this link right here. LEAF programs can be expanded to accept food, as I said, and we're able to assist. And my information is right there. And I assume this has been recorded, so you'll be able to find it if you need it. And with that, I can either take questions now or wait till after Kate's done. Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Mark, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good.
Hard to read that from the back here. And we don't need the other things on that.
That better?
Is that better? I don't think there's any way to get the full screen.
Looks good on mine.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it.
You look at my computer if you want.
What's immersive? How about that?
Impressive. It's really impressive.
I would not.
No.
Yeah, it's because it's within Zoom. Yeah, it's because it's within Zoom, so we call it Zoom stuff around.
Oh, I thought there was a way to
Thank
do
you,
that.
Mark, for starting us off, and I just want to say Mark's been a great technical advisor to me over the years, and helped me get started in the early days down in Stonington, so I've always really appreciated that, connected me to some really good resources along the way. And I attended Maine Compost School in 2019, which is where I met Mark, which is a great program if anyone really wants to get into compost. It's a week-long intensive course, and there's actually a real test at the end, which really scared me because I hadn't taken a test in a long time. But it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of theory. There's theory and stuff in the classroom, and then you go out on these field trips to all of these compost facilities around the state. And that was just really eye-opening. I didn't really have that much experience with composting. I just knew that I wanted to do it. So to see all of these other places around the state was really inspiring. Also, when I was on that tour, I thought, wow, all the people who run these sites are really old and they're men. And I thought, wow, I think there's a good, like, business opportunity here too. So, I mean, at that point, I wanted to start composting as a business anyway, but that just kind of reinforced my drive to do it. I would also like to add that when I had the idea for composting, it really was about addressing climate change first and foremost. And Mark really he agreed with that, but I remember having a conversation with him where he was like, yeah, that's great, but you also have to make a good product that people will want to buy. It's you have to look at the whole picture of it. So that's always been that's something in the back of my mind. I also have to make a good product, which I hope I'm doing now. Anyway, so here's a little bit about our vision and mission of Chickadee Compost. If anyone has not read it yet. Basically, I started really focused on the peninsula and Isle, and have expanded into Ellsworth and onto MDI in the past year. Well, I've been in Ellsworth for a few years, but I expanded into MDI this last fall. And that's an area of big growth for me right now. People in MDI are really pumped about composting. So just to go back a little bit to like how I started, I saw this cartoon. No, this cartoon always makes me laugh. But that's it in a nutshell. I thought, what can I do? I'm not a climate scientist. I'm not going to be a climate scientist. What can I do as an individual to directly have some positive, effect in fighting climate change? And at the time I was working for a seafood or an organization that sends seafood to food banks called SeaShare. And it's a great organization that works mostly with the fisheries in Alaska to send seafood to food banks all around the US. And so that really got me thinking about food waste, or wasted food, as Mark would say, food scraps, and just the food system in the US and how messed up it is. And I got really connected into different organizations through that working in the food waste space, including an organization called ReFed, which is doing a lot of really cool work on food waste issues. So if you don't know them, look them up.
What?
Called ReFed. Yeah, REFED.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I worked for that organization SeaShare out in Seattle, and then moved back here in 2018, and was kind of ready for a change, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was talking to one of my good friends down in Portland, and she was like, well, there's this really cool company called Garbage to Garden, and they like pick up our food scraps, and it's amazing, like compost it. And then they give me free compost. And I thought, that's so cool. I think I could do that in Blue Hill. I think I could do that on this peninsula. So that was really sort of how it started. We were off to the races, and that was summer of 2019, probably. I know Mark said he doesn't like the EPA version of the food waste hierarchy, the wasted food hierarchy. But this is a newer version that came out in 2023, which shows composting obviously above anaerobic digestion, application to the land, landfill and incineration. But again, just to reiterate, donation, upcycling, feeding animals, leaving crops unharvested are better than composting and anaerobic digestion. So I just wanted to highlight again sort of where I am within that hierarchy. And then to give you, I know you as a committee are interested in food waste, obviously, and climate activities, but just to sort of give you an idea of our current local waste issues in Hancock County. As probably most of you know, most of our waste was supposed to go to the fiber right plant in Hamden, which operated very briefly, which is currently closed, which may open, who knows. And then we were also, most of our solid waste was being sent to the Perk plant in Orrington for a long time. That closed as well. That also might reopen. Unsure, we'll see. In the meantime, everything's been landfilled since 2023. And so it's just this huge opportunity for us again. I think, Mark said that 28% of our solid waste is food scraps in Maine. So, we know that we have such a limited resource in the existing landfill at Juniper Ridge. They're trying to expand it now. That expansion will only last a couple of years. I think it's maybe a decade. And then what? It's really an emergency situation. And I think we could all agree that exporting our waste somewhere else away is not necessarily the solution. So Mark already went through this, so we can skip this, but this is a little picture of my compost facility in Surrey on a sunny day in the summer a couple of years ago. I'm having an open house on Saturday. If anyone would like to come, 11 to 1, you'll get to see that place in action. And then this is a little visual of composting as a composting process. And Mark went over this bit, but just to help you visualize it, you combine water and air and greens and browns, and lots of little guys, creatures, and fungi show up, and it all just sort of magically turns to compost, with a lot of work and management. But I find it to be such a magical process that I can just take what are, Mark, I don't know if you can see these, but take what, just some random food scraps, combine it with some carbon, and I'll get into what that is a little bit later. And a month later, it looks like that. And then a year later, it looks like this. And every day I'm just so amazed at the magic of it all. I know there's a science to it too, but I'm not a scientist. Let's do that. I love science, but I find it to be kind of witchy and yeah, it's more of a witchy thing for me. So and then I'm composting, it's a community composting company, but I'm not doing it in a vacuum. I've been really inspired and grown a lot through my connections to a community composting group that is managed by the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. If you don't know that organization, they're doing really great stuff, especially around composting. And so this is a map that they put together showing the growth of community composting around the country over the last 20 years. And you can see it's pretty exciting what's happening. I just want to, it's not just Kate and Garbage to Garden coming up with this. Like, there's a whole movement, and it's even growing in Maine right now, which is really, really great to see. Plenty of trash to go around. Not trash, food scraps. Wasted food. This is really hard to read, so I don't expect anyone to read it, but I just wanted to show you. So the EPA has something called the waste reduction model, the WARM model, where you can enter how many tons of food scraps you diverted from a landfill and composted, and it will spit out how many equivalent metric tons of carbon dioxide you've not emitted. It's really hard to read, and it's all kind of, it's a very old-fashioned Excel spreadsheet, so it always feels a little sketchy, but it comes from the EPA, so it's legitimate. Maybe Mark has more information about the WARM model, but so I input that every year just to sort of see what comes out. So last year, for example, I composted 244 tons of food scraps, which is the equivalent of taking 78 passenger vehicles off the road. It's not big, but not bad for a little community. And then I just wanted to highlight the partnerships that have been so important to my success over the last few years. Little Heritage Trust is on top for the main reason is they leased me some land in Surrey, and I compost there. I have leased two acres from them, long-term lease. And they've been great landlords and very supportive from the get-go. Also, the town of Stonington let me compost in the early days using some fish boxes and a solar-powered forced air system that Mark helped us devise, which worked, but we outgrew it really quickly. But it was a really great way to, again, as Mark said, start small, figure things out, and then grow from there. I work with the town of Dural to collect all of their crab waste, or I should say wasted crab. And then the town of Surrey has been super supportive in supporting having a compost facility there. They've been really great. And then DEP, obviously, I've received a few grants from them to help build out my site. They helped with a lot of purchasing of buckets and bins and paving the pad and getting a screener and lots of other things. Co-op has been really supportive over the years. I have a shed there. Most of you have seen it or use it. So they've been great partners as well, letting me set that up, not really knowing what I was doing. And I didn't really know what I was doing when I started. And they were like, sure, that sounds cool. So they've been great. And then some of the earliest businesses who started composting with me, shout out to Brooklyn Inn in town here. But yeah, they're all pretty much still with me and have been really great partners all along the way. And I work with an organization called One Earth Composting. They're based in Hamden, and they serve Bangor, Brewer, and Hamden. And they don't have a composting site yet, so they collect food scraps up there and bring them down to me, and we compost them together every Wednesday. It's our little Wednesday meetup, and we have a little compost party. So that's been a really great partnership to have that connection to them. And they were just getting started about a year and a half after I was starting, and so we've had a lot of fun information sharing stuff. And you just is that me?
No.
So they've been really wonderful. And also the husband, it's a husband and wife, and the husband does most of the hands-on work, and he's very handy. So when things break down, I can just wait for him to come on Wednesdays, which is nice. And then I've started working on MDI this year with the Bar Harbor Garden Club and Maine Coast Heritage Trust. I have a shed at the Stone Barn Farm in Bar Harbor, which is a Maine Coast Heritage Trust property. I don't know if you've been over there, really beautiful spot, and there are trails and everything there. So I have one of the sort of co-op style sheds there. And the garden club is helping to support the first year of the program. So they have underwritten the program partially for the first year, which has been really great. And the Bar Harbor Garden Club gets things done. So they've made a lot of connections for me, and are really wonderful people. So challenges, as I grow and make this a viable business, and it's getting there. I'm not sure if it's all the way there yet. Some people don't understand why they should pay me to take their waste. They think they're doing me a favor when they ask me to come get it, but it's always a little confusing to me because they pay someone to pick up, empty their dumpster, and it's it's hard to explain sometimes. I would say there's also can be a sort of generational difference with folks, people seeing the value of composting versus not. Say younger folks in general go, oh yeah, cool, that's great, let's make that happen. And older people who've maybe been doing it a certain way for a very long time are sort of like, oh, wait, but I'm giving it to you. It's like, I know, thank you. And it takes time and money for me to get here. So, so it's always sort of a challenge getting people to pay, but for the most part, almost everyone's paying right now. There are a few holdovers that I was very kind to in the beginning, and now they're not quite ready yet, but anyway, we'll get there. Other challenges, I drive a lot in the big old gas guzzling truck, which is a bit exhausting. I have someone who works part-time for me now, so she's doing a lot of the driving, which really helps. Contamination is a really big problem. And I had something in here, but I guess it didn't come in. Produce stickers are my number
Oh,
one
yeah.
enemy.
Yeah.
Someone told me last year that they heard that they were edible.
No.
No, they're the only thing, they're plastic, for sure. They survive years in the compost pile. So contamination is a real challenge, and it's quite interesting because I still see it in the households who are paying to participate. I still see plenty of contamination in those buckets. So it's something we all have to work on. No one's perfect. It's even a problem in my own house, and I say, you know, I own a composting company. Can't we just take the sticker off the avocado skin? But anyway, so I know it's a struggle. And then another challenge is when scaling up, sort of the next level of equipment is really expensive. So what I have now are, and you'll see a picture, but I have a skid steer loader, which is a great little machine. I love it. And I have a screener, a small screener that DEP helped me buy. But they're all kind of the smaller, lower end of this equipment. So if I really wanted to grow, I would need, instead of a $20,000 screener, I might need a $150,000 screener, and there's not much in between, and that's a real challenge for a sort of small, medium composting company like me. And then I would love to have an all-electric fleet, but I'm not there yet. Or I should say, we are not there yet. Our society is not there yet, but I'd love to be able to cruise around in an electric truck or electric van and not burn fossil fuels as I'm going to pick up food scraps. That is a challenge. Just some really beautiful photos, what it looks like when it gets dumped out. So thank you for all that beautiful stuff. Does anyone see anything that shouldn't be in that picture?
Snickers. Yeah.
Exactly. Good eye. So, and we try to pick them out, but sometimes I'm just not in the mood, or it's too cold or whatever, you know, so we pick them out as it goes, and then they screen out, and then I get them at the very end before they, you know, go in my bag or go into the food core pile. Hopefully, I know a few make it through. So here's some examples. So of the essential ingredients for success. Let's picture of my skid steer. In the center is a big pile of mouse bedding that I get, and that's my main source of carbon. This is what it looks like if it's been in a little box for a month. So it's a little bit decomposed here, but it's a little bit composted. But it's mouse bedding that comes from Jackson Lab, and it's 99% wood shavings and 1% mouse poop and mouse pee, and it's great stuff for composting. And Mark hooked me up with that whole idea, which has been really fantastic, and it's an incredible local resource we have between Ellsworth and Bar Harbor, Jackson Lab locations. They're producing, I think, hundreds and hundreds of tons of this stuff every year. You have to buy it. I am able to get it pretty low cost or free most of the time. Yeah, they're pretty generous with me. So there's
know about what the mice are being fed at the lab?
I don't worry about it. So any of the mice that are being tested on, experimented on, this is not their bedding. This is the bedding for the millions and millions of mice that are raised for other people's research. Yeah, and I was just over there last week talking to their sustainability manager, and she told me they just tested for PFAS finally, and they're PFAS free and all that stuff. So they're very happy to report that, and I'm also happy to report that. So
Where did it go before?
so I don't know where it went way back, and maybe Mark knows, but I get it from a third party, from a company called Maine Organics, which is a composting company in Ellsworth. And they compost seafood waste, and mouse bedding. Before Maine Organics, when they've been around for maybe 8 years or so, I'm not sure where it was going.
EMR Inc. was taking it all the way to Unity Plantation to be bedded with sludge to make sludge compost. And there was a huge hauling footprint.
Yeah, we know where that went. Sludge.
Yeah, so it's now a very local resource and I can't get enough of it. I mean, I do get enough of it. I have enough, but I love it. I love it. I'm always talking about it. And then that picture on the right is just an example of my smaller turned windrow system from maybe last year or the year before. So you can see I have a couple different piles there, different stages, different colors. The darker the pile, the more well cured and ready it is. You can, yeah, anyway, so that's just an example of what it looks like at the compost site. And then I love working with kids and doing this, and so I provide composting services for free for all the peninsula schools that I work with. So I'm working with Consolidated School, Surrey, Brooksville, Penobscot, Bay School, and GSA right now. So I pick up food scraps from them for free during the school year, and that actually works out quite well because then I have more material in the winter that I wouldn't otherwise have because most of our restaurants close down or really, 1 or 2 days a week in the down season. So it helps supplement the piles. And it feels good and the kids like to do it. So the picture on the left is from Ellsworth. I used to compost with them. I don't do it anymore. But yeah, they were really into that. And then the picture on the right is at the Brooksville School that they had a compost delivery last year and we're using it in their school garden. And then here's some pictures. You might recognize that one on the right. I think that was last year or the year before, I'm not sure. So yeah, so I deliver compost around our community, including with the food corps. And then the picture on the left is at Loaves and Fishes Food Pantry in Ellsworth. And I pick up food scraps from them as well. So it's a nice little closed loop system with them. So it's always fun to deliver. And they have really big container gardens there and do a lot of really nice garden work there. And then winter composting. Here's an example of what it's like. So on the left, you can see we get some iciness sometimes. I can tell that is from a bin from a school, because schools always have really wet baby carrots and corn. It just so yeah, that's an ice block from a school, and then you can see the center photo is a picture of the temperature even in the middle of winter, which I think is maybe 150 in that photo. And then on the right, the piles, no matter how much snow we get in the middle of winter, the piles stay warm and they're steaming away. So that's why there's no snow on top of the pile. I think that was the biggest storm we had last year, not this year, but 2023. Anyway, so also no maggots in the winter. Maggots have just starting to rebirth themselves this week. So we're reacquainting ourselves.
This summer.
Oh yeah, there are plenty of maggots. So these are some common questions I get. I'm happy to answer any of those if you have any questions. Mouse bedding, ew, I hear that one a lot. Yeah.
At one point in there, you were talking about marine mammal.
That was Mark.
And what are the marine mammals that they're,
Mark,
it looked like a lot of stuff. I mean, where are the marine mammals that they're?
Mark, he is certified, qualified to compost large marine mammal mortalities, so he could probably talk about that a bit more.
Yeah, so the marine mammal parts I showed you were from the University of New England in Bedford. They used to have a marine mammal rehabilitation center before they changed their pattern and became an aquaculture center instead. And what happened is that a lot of the stranded animals, some made it, some didn't. And so when they died, they had to do a necropsy to see what killed them. And then they would generate a lot of what they call offal, which is basically the animal parts. And they'd put them in a freezer. And when they had a whole bunch of it built up, we'd build a compost pile.
Yeah, yeah.
What about seaweed?
I will take seaweed, if people are bringing it to me in some form or another, I don't go out and collect it though.
It works. It's got some salinity issues, but as long as it's not put in as a, more than like 25% of the pile, the microbes that are doing the work usually will take it and eat that as well. But what happens is if you put a challenging residual in too much, it can actually shut down a pile's performance.
About contamination, I have a couple of questions. One is, it seems like these food labels, stickers, don't need to be fixed. And I feel like some of them aren't plastic. Seems like we should be lobbying suppliers to switch. Doesn't seem that hard to do, and it would make their life so much easier.
Actually, my understanding is there was a meeting in Canada last year where a large international group decided to move away from plastic stickers. But I don't know what the timeline is on it. I will say banana stickers are generally just paper and they decompose. I also encourage you to talk to your local grocery stores and co-ops about the extra stickers they sometimes add.
And why do we need that? I mean, we grew up without stickers. I mean, what?
Yeah.
Our food, okay.
Yeah.
You
Have a sticker on each individual apple and then they'll put it in a bag and then they put it in a bag and then
Yeah.
compound.
Yeah, and in terms of like as a large scale issue, like it's tiny, right? But it puts, for my, yeah, yeah. And it affects the quality of my compost, I'd like to be able to say it's 100% clean, devoid of stickers.
The other question was about tea bags. I thought I saw on your site that you accept tea bags, but my understanding was that tea bags are
Depends
a
on,
portion of plastic in them.
not all tea bags are built the same.
Still, but
Yeah.
you don't mind if people include tea bags. I
I
went
have-
through an
yeah.
old pile of mine that had to be like 8 years old and there were tea bags.
Yeah, there are the sort of the triangular shaped ones are often plastic.
But I think even the ones that look like paper.
Yeah, it's really, it depends on the company, like, if it's Yogi teas, those are all good. And I think they don't even have a staple, it's all paper and string. So, know your tea bag. Yeah.
Bones,
Yeah.
do they really break down? And if not, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, so small bones do. I tell people I don't really want bones bigger than a fist in the piles, so I'll take like chicken bones and they break down really easily. Larger bones eventually do break down, and so what I do is they stay in the pile and then they get screened out in the spring when I'm screening compost, or fall when I'm screening compost, and I just put them back in. Anything that I screen out in the spring or fall when I'm screening, I just put back in the newer piles and they continue to break down. So eventually the bones get really brittle and then you run over them and they turn into powder. So.
We'll often grind them and turn it into bone dust, and that can be used for rhododendrons and rose bushes and other items like that. So
Yeah.
even though they don't always break down, they can be ground into a powder.
Yeah, and I compost a lot of crab, and I do that by I'll take 8 or 20 bins at a time, dump it out, and just run over it with my skid steer and turn it into this very delicious slurry crab soup.
Do the seagulls find it?
They took a while to find me, but they have found me, yeah. But as long as it's covered with enough mouse bedding and enough chips or leaves, keeps them away.
This may be a question for Mark and Sylvia, but I believe there's a vast amount of food waste generated by the supermarket chains as becomes too old to sell on the shelves. I wonder if you're able to make any use of that, or what part in your quantification of wasted food that item plays.
Yeah, so I know Hannaford works with the big digester in Exeter to collect all of their food, excess food. However, since our Hannaford is, still kind of a trade winds. So they operate, hopefully no one from Hannaford management is here, but traditionally at trade winds, a group in East Blue Hill was picking up all the extra food they had, taking it to their pigs in East Blue Hill and composting the rest. It became too much for them, so now what they do is they take it to their pigs and the chickens, and everything else they can't handle, they bring to me. So that we have kind of just a little quiet system happening in Blue Hill. So Ellsworth Hannaford is probably using iRecycle, the digester, and I'm not sure about Shaw's.
There's a vast amount of plastic involved in the packaging.
Yeah, and they have a depackaging system at the iRecycle.
Yeah.
I will say you'd be surprised that I think supermarkets don't waste as much as households and schools, especially, and restaurants. You'd be surprised at how little actually they're wasting, because it's their business, and so and Hannaford, I know, donates a lot of food to Loaves and Fishes.
Yeah.
They do a lot of.
So I'll tell you a quick story. This past spring, we had some heavy rain around St. Patty's Day, and the Gardner facility got flooded, and their freezers shut down, and all that food had to go to Exeter because the coolers had shut down for a period of time where it was considered unsafe. And I actually went and did an inspection, and there were probably 7 or 8 thousand pounds of briskets that had to be thrown away because the cooler had shut down. And it couldn't go to animals, it couldn't go to people because of the health concerns, and all that went into the digester. So those are the things that make you really wonder why we can't have some sort of sudden notification and get this material to homeless shelters where people can have that nourishing food.
But thank goodness we have the digester and we have composters who,
Yep.
it's not going to landfill in this instances.
What is the digester?
So
What's
it's,
the process of that?
well, maybe Mark can explain it better than I can. I'm not a.
Sure. So basically what happens is this is about a 1,200 to 1,400 dairy cow farm. And what they do is they take liquid manure from the cows and it goes into the digester, which is a big tank. They currently have close to 52 million pounds of capacity. It's quite massive. And they dump in the manure, but in order for the anaerobic digestion process to work, you need to have other organic materials. So they dump the food scraps that have gone through the depackager into this slurry, and then it slowly rotates it, and it keeps it about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. And as it's slowly rotating, there's no oxygen, so the microbes operate anaerobically and it generates lots and lots of methane. And that methane is captured and scrubbed, and then it turns into energy that goes into one of their generators that sends electricity to the grid. When the digester is done, the material that comes out is still semi-solid. It goes into a screw press, which squeezes all the liquid out, which then goes into the fields for irrigation and for nutrients. And the bedding material that comes out is dried and put under the cows. So it's quite a unique process.
Can I just a follow-up question? So digesters are often talked about as technofixes. Is there a net energy gain from it? from the digestion process. If you include the cost of the materials that go into producing the digester.
Well, when I told you that we didn't like the EPA's their scale, it was because they put digestion above composting back in the day. And the reason why they did is because it produced energy, but it also produced the digestate. And one of the benefits of anaerobic digestion is that what comes out of it still has a ton of nitrogen, so it can go right into a compost pile and make compost. So you get the energy from it and you can make compost. What these guys do though is they don't want to make compost. They just want to keep recycling it. So the answer is it does definitely have a net benefit, but I will tell you that one of the biggest problems with digestion is it produces nitrous oxide as a byproduct, and nitrous oxide is 250 times more potent a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide is. So they have to be very careful to scrub that.
Does the digester have a capacity to deal with, plastics that come in along with the compostable material? And
Yeah, their depackager is very selective. So if you go to the place and you do a tour, you'll be disgusted at the way it does things, but it is very efficient. But it's just a big pile of stinky, rotting stuff that they work on every day. I mean, they're basically every single day they're dealing with putrescible material every day without stop.
I would just say, that's what I love about composting is that it's so low tech. There's no tech required basically, other than this, some way to turn the material. I'm just out there on a pad in all weather, and it does its thing with the right conditions, turning and ensuring there's the right carbon to nitrogen ratio. It's pretty cool.
Every single thing has its place, even landfilling does, honestly. When absolutely nothing can be done with the material, landfilling is still better than just letting it sit out in the open and rot. At least with the landfills, the methane's being produced, but a lot of them are capturing the gas and generating electricity from it. So our landfills are getting better, but that space is so valuable for trash that I hate seeing it taken up by organics, which can be recycled. So that's really the honest truth is that keep our landfills for garbage.
Mark, is Juniper Ridge capturing gas?
I think they have started doing it, and I don't know what level they're at, but Waste Management is capturing their gases, and it's really cool. And we're going to try to find a way to do some of these old municipal landfills and see if we can recover those gases as well. Because all those are basically just burping out carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxide every single day as that stuff keeps breaking down.
So a question for you, you do stuff that we don't necessarily have the capability of doing it at our home. What is it that you can compost that we wouldn't be able to do in our backyard? You've mentioned a few things that I
Yeah.
thought,
So
I didn't know you
basically,
could
anything
compost that.
that has been alive, so any part of food, including meat, seafood, shells, any material that has once been alive.
Okay, so for somebody who's composting at home, what's the stuff that I would say, that's not gonna go into my compost bin, but I should keep it and put it in
Well, I
a
guess
chickadee bin?
it depends, how much wildlife you want in your backyard or how actively you're managing your pile. I think a lot of people find that they kind of throw stuff out back and try not to think about it, or they think, oh, I should turn that. I think they told me to turn that once in a while, but that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
So
So-
in those cases, I wouldn't recommend putting meat in your home compost pile.
Right.
They're
Right.
just going to attract animals.
okay,
Meat, fats, and dairy.
all right.
Those are the key ones because when they break down, if you don't have them well amended, they attract animals. That's really the key.
Meat, fats, and dairy. All right, very good.
That was my question to you. How do you deal with?
I would think bears,
Yeah.
raccoons, whatever.
Lots and lots of mouse bedding and wood chips.
Yep.
So I basically, I cap everything, so I mix it all together, 2 parts mouse bedding, 1 part food scraps. But then I also cap it with either mouse bedding or wood chips.
And
And
that deters them from.
deters. I will say, I mean, I do have some rats, I do have some seagulls. I have a very healthy turkey population.
How about bears?
No bears, and that's been really interesting actually, because a number of people in Surrey have said, oh, there are a lot of bears up there, you must get a lot of bears, and I've not seen them, it doesn't, you know, I haven't seen signs of them. Occasionally, I think there's a raccoon who comes through and tries to open things
Yeah,
up.
the webcam.
I don't, actually, I have one at home, but I just like haven't set it up yet, but yeah.
Yeah.
It would be very interesting.
Are those bioplastics that you see, the forks and knives, and even the bags, are they really compostable?
So Mark
No.
said no. I tell people.
What is going on there? I mean, how can they advertise it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
It's contradicting what the co-op is telling.
They fragment into tiny pieces, but they never go away. I've done several studies that I've published in Biocycle magazine using the marine mammal parts, which are very compostable. We put them in these bags, we put them in the piles, and at the end of the compost process, I'm still finding fragments of the bag. So it's greenwashing, and they're trying harder and harder and getting better and better at sending disinformation out.
yeah, so in general, I don't take the PLA plastics. I have taken some of those cups and they have gone through the composting process and they're nowhere to be found. So they are really small, tiny PLA parts.
Yes.
Composted. They're not just kicking around the site though. But I really don't want the PLA plastics. I don't want forks and knives. And part of that is because those PLA products are really hard to differentiate from the regular white plastic forks and knives. And so then someone thinks, oh, well, that's got to be compostable too. And then you've got a lot of plastic forks in your compost.
Plus they have PFAS in them too, a lot of the compounds.
Yeah. I do take paper towels and paper napkins. And I do take BPI certified other paper goods. If they're coming from a restaurant, I'll discuss with them what exactly the product is and I'll take it on a case by case basis. But in general,
There you go.
no. And also, like, I'm not certified organic with MAFCA, but if I were to pursue that, I would have to totally cut out any of the PLA plastics.
You know, Kate, that might be a really good project for some high school students on the peninsula to work with you to try some of these compostable items and just do a
Yeah,
pile where they can evaluate the performance for it.
yeah, that is a good idea. Yeah, yeah,
And post the results of the co-op.
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Kate, your open house, you said you're having on Saturday?
It's on Saturday, yeah, 11 to 1.
Where are you?
In Surrey on Jill's Lane, 45 Jill's Lane, which is part of the Blue Hill Heritage Trust Meadowbrook Forest property. So it's just off the Ellsworth Road.
That's where the firewood depot is.
Exactly, it's
Yes.
up the hill from the wood bank.
And are you giving like a tour?
Yeah, I'm gonna have a tour, there'll be some bags of compost for sale, a guy named Sam Cheney's gonna be there, he's over in Steuben, and he's producing a green crab fertilizer now,
We're working with him, Kate. Mark Hedrick and I, he's got a compost management plan.
yeah, he told me that, yeah.
Yep. He's a good boy.
Like, I don't wanna be in a compost business, I was like, cool.
Yeah. No, he's not, he's making a very high tech, super expensive blend.
Yeah, I love, he caught 100,000 pounds of green crabs last year, so everyone should be like cheering him on.
Yeah.
One man show, but he's someone who doesn't just talk about green crabs, but actually is doing something about green.
He is.
So I love what he's doing, so he's gonna be there, and we'll have some of his fertilizer for sale too.
How about raining? What's the rainy Saturday?
Yeah, I know, we'll see.
Not
Maybe
like
sprinkle
last
here and
time.
there, I don't know.
Kate, who is your partner that is British or from the UK? She came to the
Kristen,
legislative session yesterday,
yeah, she's
and
also
she
here.
did she tell you she sang Chickadee, Chickadee?
No, she didn't tell me that.
Yeah, you should. I burst out. It was really awesome.
Wow,
It broke up the whole thing. It was great.
oh, that's cool, yeah. Yeah, she just made up that song last week.
Yeah, yeah, and she sang it in front of the legislative committee.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. No, she hasn't told me that yet.
What
Yeah, yeah. No, she's a hoot and a half.
No.
What's the legislation that concerns composting?
It's a ban of food scraps from landfill, and the problem with it is, well, I'm not going to get into all the semantics, but the bottom line is that it's a ban that we basically currently have about maybe 30% capacity in the state of Maine to handle the 361,000 tons of food that's wasted each year, of which 140,000 is actual food from people and restaurants and things like that. The other 220,000 is stuff from farms, and it's not really wasted. It just doesn't go to market. It ends up either being recycled or gleaned by groups. But right now, all the capacity we have together is only able to apply maybe 18 to 19% of what we need. So the department is trying to find ways to do more education, more outreach, and this would basically put us in a very precarious position. So that's about as much as I can say as far as what we've testified.
The picture is there anything, worthy of note about uh, the price support, what do you call them, price support payments which are put out by the federal government to farmers who do happen to produce excess, and the government will then pay them for that excess. So I hear, which more or less underwrites the production of excess by large farmers because it's a price support kind of system which the government's willing to engage in with the farmers. Is there any substance to that, or is that just?
There is one of the problems is that we launched this food loss and waste generation study, and what happened was that it was only done over 4 months, so it was a very short timeline. When they sent us the draft, we didn't even have a chance to review it before it was published and sent out by a well-meaning person, sent out to everyone, and the newspapers got a hold of it and saw that 61% of the food that's lost is agricultural. And so they said Aroostook County was the biggest waster of food, and it was farmers who were to blame. And that was totally taken out of context because what really happens is that farmers that they harvest, and then what they can't harvest, they let be gleaned. And then what they can't glean, they turn back into the ground as green manure for the next crop. So it's not wasted, it's put back into production. But because the newspaper wanted a sexy headline, they said that, and it made the county explode. And so we felt very unfortunate that we didn't have a chance to even vet the study before it got released. And that unfortunately sometimes happens when you have too many partners in a project.
So there's nothing to that the government is willing to buy excess production from the farmers?
I have not seen that. I do know that you could reach out to either the Smiths or McCain Potatoes because both of those are big players in Washington, D.C. But I don't think that it would be the mom and pop farms in Maine. I think it would be the big producers. Like, I mean, broccoli, probably 50 to 60% of all the broccoli in the world is grown up in the county. So it's just amazing. If you really look at Maine agriculture, we do some truly amazing things. And unfortunately, climate change is starting to take some of that away from us. Blueberry harvest, maybe in 10, 20 years, we may not have nearly as much because of the way that the climate's going. All that is heading north towards Canada, just like the lobster harvest is heading north towards Canada due to the warming Gulf. So it's just climate is here and it's something that we have to deal with. And to be resilient, we just have to have multiple ways of dealing with it.
They're gonna be the 51st state, so it'll be a problem.
I have a feeling that when all is said and done, we're gonna play nice again.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I think we always have, and you know what? I think we'll play nice again.
Can I give a shameless plug for our compost pile?
Yeah.
Okay, so most everybody here already knows. So the Brooklyn Food Corps has purchased some of this beautiful Chickadee compost. And we have it in a pile over there by the community garden. And we're selling it through today for $5 for a 5-gallon bucket. I have coupons in the back that will let you purchase it through May 11th at that same discounted rate, but it goes up. The
Nope.
$7.50 a bucket after that.
Where did you say that's from? Is it from Kate's
It's on
business?
tape. Yeah.
Okay. I thought I heard you say Kinney Compost because Kinney Compost is on the island, MDI. He's gotten the bid for the Rockefellers property.
Oh.
Yeah, but he's sold them 5,000 yards of material, so it's crazy amounts.
Must be high-end waste.
Yeah.
It's just that he meets all their standards for soil testing. They have to have a certain moisture content, and every single test that they gave, including PFAS, he passed 100%. So he was against 5 other individuals, and it worked out for him.
Well, anyway, we think a lot of the Chickadee compost. And
Good.
we had this sale originally because we wanted to help home growers grow good produce. Because we're all about food sufficiency and locally produced food. But if you wanted to get a 5-gallon bucket, that kind of quantity, you'd have to buy it with a bag from the hardware store.
Right.
Well, we started by going up to, like, we went to Gouldsboro one year and got a truckload of that compost in to sell that off, and then we and we were doing amazing deliveries, right? Because people could get a half a yard of this great compost where if they had purchased it directly from the Gouldsboro operation, they'd have had to pay a couple $100s for delivery. Well, we were having our volunteers do the delivery. Anyway, it was great. And now our volunteers don't have to do hardly any deliveries at all because we say, if you need a half a yard, just go straight to Kate. She'll deliver it for less than we would charge you. So it's been a really nice collaboration from my standpoint.
Yeah.
Kate, I was actually thinking about something with the bucket, the bucket that has your label on it. What if you were to actually go out and recruit new members, but starting out their first month by giving them a bucket, but a bucket full of compost, so they can see what they're going to get in the future?
So when people sign up, and if it's during give back season, they are welcome to get a free bag of a 5-gallon bag of compost in the spring and fall.
I just think having your bucket full of compost,
Yeah.
say here, dump this out and use it, and then put your food scraps in, and your first month is just the cost of the bucket and the compost.
Yeah, it's a good idea. What I've done on MDI, it's a little different than what we're doing over here. So the first 50 households who signed up got a free bucket that becomes theirs, and then they have to clean their bucket.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's working out really well for me. And then other people who have signed up since are just using buckets they have at home. And it's funny because I sent out an email a couple weeks ago, probably someone in the crowd got it, where I said, oh, and Blue Hill people, your buckets, blah, blah, blah. There's been a delay and, seasonal delay, but your buckets are going to be back at the co-op. And a couple of people on MDI wrote back and said, wait, are you washing buckets for people in Blue Hill? And I thought, oops, I should have kept that separate.
There you go.
Anyway, so the folks on MDI said, oh, well, I would pay more for that. I thought, yeah, that's hard to clean a bucket. When you're cleaning a couple hundred.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not the most fun, especially in the middle of winter. Yeah.
So, Scrap Dogs actually came and got a grant from us for a dump trailer with a pressure washer built in.
Wow,
Yeah, and that actually, you can talk to Davis Saltonstall.
yeah,
He, it was pretty interesting and innovative. So that way they clean the bucket right there after they dump it.
yeah. It's like, where do they put the goo goo?
They have a reservoir that holds it,
Okay.
and then so they just rinse it so that water can then be recycled.
Yeah,
They don't put any soap or anything in
yeah. I
because
think,
most people don't care.
yeah, yeah. We'll see which way we go. I'm not making any predictions with this crowd right now, but
Yeah, I hear you.
we might be moving to the NDI model at some point.
I'm always willing to give ideas and live vicariously.
Can I raise a kind of off? This is. Jumping one.
Yeah,
Are you being proactive about that? I mean, it's something that I do not want.
yeah.
Now,
yeah,
I
don't
guess you
either.
can disabuse me of that notion. Is it going to
Yeah.
be inevitable? But secondly, are you concerned?
I was very concerned when I learned about them for the first time about a year and a half ago. But I did all the research I could, and Vermont is really far ahead of us on this, and they've done a lot of work around composting and jumping worms. And basically, my piles are so hot for so long that the jumping worms don't really have an opportunity to enter my piles, and my piles are on asphalt, which gets really hot in the summer, and jumping worms die at 104 degrees. So I'm not too worried about it. I also have never seen them.
They're in all the counties, but
But yeah,
they're in
I know
they're in
they're-
debris,
yeah,
storm debris.
yeah. I know they're around, but I have not seen them in my compost. I can
Yep.
that.
We have a task force, and basically we go and investigate if someone thinks they have them, but most of the time they're just juvenile earthworms. People just get freaked out when they touch them and they wiggle. They're like, "Oh my God, it's a jumping worm." But jumping worms are really spastic. You know the difference right away.
Yeah. I mean, and I will just add, like, all worms in North America are invasive, so we can hate on jumping worms, and they do a lot of damage to forests.
Yes.
Our friendly earthworms are also invasive, so just keep that in mind.
Plus, if they're in your compost pile, it means it's done. So, and they're only making it better because as they go along and poop, they're making more nutrients.
Yeah.
But they're not harmful, they're just disgusting.
Jumping worms? No, they are harmful. They're really bad for forests.
They eat all the soil and they diminish the nutrient value.
Couple of layers, and they are prolific breeders, but they have also a very short season. They hatch in June and then they die in the first frost.
Yep.
So I don't lose any sleep
Do they
over
have
them
any
anymore. I
natural-
did, when I first found out about them, I thought, oh my God, like this is gonna be the end of me.
Do they have any natural predators?
I don't know.
No, and we are working on all kinds of treatments for the soil. The only one that seems to work is taking the soil and then putting it in a solarized situation in a greenhouse, things like that, or putting it in a black plastic bag and leaving it out in the sun. That's the only thing, because if you kill the worms, that's not the issue. The issue is the cocoons and the eggs, which are very resistant to breakdown.
They
So
get-
you got to wipe it all out.
And they lay their eggs in August and September, is my understanding.
Yeah.
So that's the danger zone right there.
Kate, I'm wondering about raising awareness about the food labels. And I was thinking, people just probably don't even know, they're just not even paying attention, but maybe if you did something like those signage at the pickup station, and possibly, maybe a label or a sticky that you would put on each one of your cans on the top, and just say, please remove your food label, just so
Yeah.
that people are aware.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I don't think people pay attention.
I know, even in my house, people don't get
Yeah.
that.
And if it's on
I know.
the lid.
Yeah, 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 that's good.
Oh, great. Thanks so much. That was a great
Yeah.
presentation.
Thank you all. If you have any questions, you have my information, and no matter what you decide to do, I think there's room for everything. So just think about what your major mission is and go from there.